Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wicked Majesty's Holiday Nights of Terror live stream. Thank you so much for joining in. I am your hostess, Keya. I've created this stream because, of course, it's the holidays, and there are tons of horror stories and ghost stories that are not being narrated enough. I love A Christmas Carol, but it's a little overrated. So, I wanted to present some other stories written by classic authors, and tonight I will start with a story called Markheim by Robert Louis Stevenson. Season's greetings, everyone. Enjoy.
Markheim by Robert Louis Stevenson. Yes, said the dealer. Our windfalls are of various kinds. Some customers are ignorant, and then I touch a dividend on my superior knowledge. Some are dishonest, and here he held up the candle, so that the light fell strongly on his visitor. And in that case, he continued, I profit by my virtue. Markheim had but just entered from the daylight streets, and his eyes had not yet grown familiar with the mingled shine and darkness in the shop. At these pointed words, and before the near presence of the flame, he blinked painfully and looked aside. The dealer chuckled. You come to me on Christmas Day, he resumed, when you know that I am alone in my house, put up my shutters, and make a point of refusing business? Well, you will have to pay for that. You will have to pay for my loss of time. When I should be balancing my books, you will have to pay. Besides, for a kind of manner that I remark in you today very strongly, I am the essence of discretion and ask no awkward questions. But when a customer cannot look me in the eye, he has to pay for it. The dealer once more chuckled, and then changing to his usual business voice, though still with a note of irony, you can give, as usual, a clear account of how you came into the possession of the object, he continued. Still your uncle's cabinet, a remarkable collector, sir. And the little pale round-shouldered dealer stood almost on tiptoe, looking over the top of his gold spectacles, and nodding his head with every mark of disbelief. Markheim returned his gaze with one of the infinite pity and a touch of horror. This time, said he, you are in error. I have not come to sell, but to buy. I have no curios to dispose of. My uncle's cabinet is bare to the wainscot, even where it's still intact. I have done well on the stock exchange, and should more likely add to it than otherwise, and my errand today is simplicity itself. I seek a Christmas present for a lady, he continued, waxing more frequent as he struck into the speech he had prepared, and certainly I owe you every excuse, thus disturbing you upon so small a matter. But the thing was neglected yesterday. I must produce my little compliment at dinner, and as you very well know, a rich marriage is not a thing to be neglected. There followed a pause, during which the dealer seemed to weigh this statement incredulously. The ticking of many clocks among the curious lumber of the shop, and the faint rushing of the cabs in a near thoroughfare filled up the interval of silence. Well, sir, said the dealer, be it so. You are an old customer after all, and if, as you say, you have the chance of a good marriage, far be it from me to be an obstacle. Here's a nice thing for a lady now, he went on. This hand-glass 15th century warranted comes from a good collection too, but I reserve the name in the interest of my customer, who was just like yourself, my dear sir. The nephew and sole heir of a remarkable collector. The dealer, while he thus ran on in his dry and biting voice, had stooped to take the object from its place, and as he had done so, a shock had passed through Markheim, a start both of hand and foot, a sudden leap of many tumultuous passions to the face. It passed as swiftly as it came, and left no trace beyond a certain trembling of the hand that now received the glass. A glass? He said hoarsely, and then paused and repeated it more clearly. A glass? For Christmas? Surely not. And why not? Cried the dealer. Why not a glass? Markheim was looking upon him with an undefinable expression. You ask me why not, he said. Why, look here. Look in it. Look at yourself. Do you like to see it? No. Nor any man. The little man had jumped back when Markheim had so suddenly confronted him with the mirror. But now, perceiving there was nothing worse on hand, he chuckled. Your future lady, sir, must be pretty hard-favored, said he. I ask you, said Markheim, for a Christmas present, and you give me this? This damned reminder of years and sins and follies? This hand conscious? Did you mean that? Did you mean it? Had you a thought in your mind? Tell me. It will be better for you if you do. Come, tell me about yourself. I hazard a guess now that you are in secret a very charitable man. The dealer looked closely at his companion. It was very odd. Markheim did not appear to be laughing. There was something in his face like an eager sparkle of hope, but not a mirth. What are you driving at? The dealer asked. Not charitable? Returned the other gloomily. Not charitable, not pious, not scrupulous, unloving, unbeloved, a hand to get money, a safe to keep it, is all? Dear God, man, is that all? I will tell you what it is, began the dealer with some sharpness, and then broke off again into a chuckle. But I see this is a love match of yours, and you have been drinking the lady's health. Ah, cried Mark with a strange curiosity. Ah, have you? You've been in love? Tell me about that. Cried the dealer. In love. I never had the time, nor have I the time today for all this nonsense. Will you take the glass? Where is the hurry? Returned Markham. It is very pleasant to stand here talking, and life is too short and insecure that I would not hurry away from any pleasure. No, not even from so mild a one as this. We should rather cling to what little we can get, like a man at a cliff's edge. Every second is a cliff, if you think upon it, a cliff a mile high enough if we fall to dash us out of every feature of humanity. Hence it is best to talk pleasantly. Let us talk of each other. Why should we wear this mask? Let us be confidential. Who knows? We might become friends. I have just one word to say to you, said the dealer. Either make your purchase or walk out of my shop. True, said Markham. Enough fooling. To business. Show me something else. The dealer stooped once more, this time to replace the glass upon the shelf, his thin blonde hair falling over his eyes as he did so. Markham moved a little nearer with one hand in the pocket of his greatcoat. He drew himself up and filled his lungs. At the same time, many different emotions were depicted together on his face. Terror, horror, and resolve, fascination, and a physical repulsion, and through a haggard lift of his upper lip, his teeth looked out. This perhaps may suit, observed the dealer. And then, as he began to re-arise, Markham bounded from behind upon his victim. The long, skewer-like dagger flashed and fell. The dealer struggled like a hen, striking his temple on the shelf, and then tumbled on the floor in a heap. Time had some score of small voices in that shop, some stately and slow, as was becoming to their great age, others garrulously and hurried. All these told out the seconds in the intricate chorus of tick-ticking. Then the passage of a lad's feet, heavily running on the pavement, broke in upon these smaller voices and startled Markham into a consciousness of his surroundings. He looked about him awfully. The candle stood on the counter, its flame solemnly wagging in a draught, and by the inconsiderable moment the whole room was filled with noiseless bustle, and kept heaving like a sea, the tall shadows nodding, the gross blots of darkness swelling and dwindling as with respiration, the faces of the portraits and the china gods changing and wavering like images in water. The inner door stood ajar, and peering into, and yet as he gazed of shadows, this bundle with a long slit and daylight like a pointing began to find from these fear-stricken rovers. There it must lie. There was none returned to the body of his victim, where it lay both humped and sprawling, there incredibly small and strangely meaner than then. And then it would with this dead flesh and the ungainly pride that the dealer lay like so much salt with the Markham had feared to see it. Dead or not, this was still the enemy. Time was that when the brains were out, he thought, and the first word struck in his mind. Time. Now that the deed was accomplished, time, which had closed for the victim, had become instant and momentous for the slayer. The thought was yet in his mind when first one and then another, with every variety of pace and voice, one deep as the bell from the cathedral turret, another ringing on its treble note, the prelude of a waltz. The clock began to strike the hour of 3 in the afternoon. The sudden outbreak of so many tongues in that dumb chamber staggered him. He began to bestir himself, going to and fro with the candle, beleaguered by moving shadows, and startled to the soul by chance reflections in many rich mirrors, some of home designs, some from Venus or Amsterdam. He saw his face repeated and repeated, as it were an army of spies. His own eyes met and detected him, and the sound of his own steps, lightly as they fell, vexed the sounding quiet. And still, as he continued to fill his pockets, his mind accused him with sickening iteration of the thousand faults of his design. He should have chosen a more quiet hour. He should have prepared an alibi. He should not have used a knife. He should have been more cautious and only bound and gagged the dealer and not killed him. He should have been more bold and killed the servant also. He should have done all these things. Otherwise, poignant regret, weary, incessant toiling of the mind to change what was unchangeable, to plan what was now useless, to be the architect of the irrevocable past. Meanwhile, and beyond and behind all this activity, brute terrors, like the scurrying rats in a deserted attic, fill the more remote chambers of his brain with riot. The hand of the constable would fall heavy on his shoulder, and his nerves would jerk like a hooked fish, or he beheld in galloping defile the dock, the prison, the gallows, and the black coffin. Terror of the people in the street sat down before his mind like a besieging army. It was impossible, he thought, but that some rumor of the struggle must have reached their ears and set on edge their curiosity. And now, in all the neighboring houses, he divined them, sitting motionless, and with uplifted ear, solitary people condemned to spend Christmas dwelling alone on memories of the past, and now startlingly recalled from that tender exercise, happy family parties struck into silence round the table. The mother still with raised finger, every degree and age and humor, but all by their own hearths, prying and hearkening and weaving the rope that was to hang them. Sometimes it seems to him he could not move too softly. The clink of the tall Bohemian goblet rang out loudly like a bell. And alarmed by the bigness of the ticking, he was tempted to stop the clocks, and then again, with the swift transition of his terrors, the very silence of the place appeared a source of peril, and a thing to strike up and freeze the passerby. And he would step more boldly and bustle aloud among the contents of the shop and imitate with elaborate bravado the movements of a busy man at ease in his own house. But he was now so pulled about by different alarms that, while one portion of his mind was still alert and cunning, another trembled on the brink of lunacy.
Now it's time for a short break to let everyone know about Wicked Majesty's Holiday Night of Terror giveaway. The entries started on December 6th, but you have until December 23rd, 11 p.m. Central Standard Time to enter into the contest. Lucky winners of this giveaway will receive a Holiday Nights of Terror t-shirt or a $25 Visa gift card. And I will be announcing the winner on Christmas Eve Livestream, and you could visit wickedmajesty.com for more details and the rules of the contest. Now, back to the story.
One hallucination in particular took a strong hold on his credulity. The neighboring hearkening with white face beside his window, the passerby arrested by a horrible surmise on the pavement. These could at worst suspect. They could not know. Through the brick walls and shuttered windows, only sounds could penetrate. But here within the house, was he alone? He knew he was. He had watched the servant set forth sweetheart Harding in her poor best, out for the day, written in every ribbon and smile. Yes, he was alone, of course, and yet, in the bulk of empty house above him, he could surely hear a stir of delicate foot. He was surely conscious, inexplicably conscious of some presence. Aye, surely, to every room and corner of the house, his imagination followed it. And now it was a faceless thing, and yet had eyes to see with it. And again it was a shadow of himself, and yet again, behold the image of the dead dealer, re-inspired with cunning and hatred. At times, with a strong effort, he would glance at the open door, which still seemed to repel his eyes. The house was tall, the skylight small and dirty, the day blind with fog, and the light that filtered down to the ground story was exceedingly faint, and showed dimly on the threshold of the shop. And yet in that strip of doubtful brightness did there not hang, wavering a shadow. Suddenly, from the street outside, a very jovial gentleman began to beat with the staff on the shop door, accompanying his blows with shouts and railleries in which the dealer was continually called upon by name. Markheim, smitten into ice, glanced at the dead man, but no, he lay quiet. Still, he was fled away far beyond earshot of these blows and shouting. He was sunk beneath the seas of silence, and his name, which would once have caught his notice above the howling of the storm, had become an empty sound, and presently the jovial gentleman desisted from his knocking and departed. Here was a broad hint to hurry what remained to be done, to get forth from this accusing neighborhood, to plunge into a bath of London multitudes, and to reach on the other side of day. That haven of safety and apparent innocence, his bed. One visitor had come. At any moment another might follow and be more abstinent. To have done the deed, and yet not to reap the profit, would be too abhorrent a failure. The money, that was now Markheim's concern, and as a means to that, the keys. He glanced over his shoulder at the open door, where the shadow was still lingering and shivering, and with no conscious repugnance of the mind, yet with a tremor of the belly, he drew near the body of his victim. The human character had quite departed. Like a suit half stuffed with brain, the limbs lay scattered, the trunk doubled on the floor, and yet the thing repelled him. Although so dingy and inconsiderable to the eye, he feared it might have more significance to the touch. He took the body by the shoulder and turned it on its back. It was strangely light and supple, and the limbs, as if they had been broken, fell into the oddest postures. The face was robbed of all expression, but it was as pale as wax, and shockingly smeared with blood about one temple. That was for Markheim the one displeasing circumstance. It carried him back upon the instant to a certain fair day in a fisher's village, a grey day, a piping wind, a crowd upon the street, the blare of the brasses, the booming of drums, the nasal voice of a ballad singer, and a boy going to and fro, buried overhead in the crowd, and divided between interest and fear.
Thank you all again for joining in to the live stream. Make sure you join me again next week as I dive back into the story of Markheim, and I hope to see you soon. Y'all have a nice night. Sleep tight. Don't let the shadows bite.